Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second of our Lenten presentation series. Last week we had a talk that was primarily spiritual in looking at how we observe Lent in a positive way and how God looks upon us as we observe Lent. This evening we're dealing with a topic that has touched many of us in the parish, dealing with the pandemic. The number of people who have been touched directly by the loss of someone at times seems astronomical. It seems that every time we meet someone, they have a story to tell us about someone they knew, a friend, a schoolmate, a family member who suffered from COVID or from some other illness in the course of the last year. Even in the last 24 hours, 2 members of our parish passed away. And so we'll be having 2 more funerals, at least farewells to members who were part of our congregations. And so it seemed like this was a very appropriate topic for us, a topic that would deal with grieving and loss and bereavement, and how each of us faces it, and how we process it internally and externally in our relations with others, and how we process it with God in our spiritual lives. So we invited Laura McLaine. She's part of the Indiana Visiting Nurses Association, and she actually is program coordinator. And as program coordinator, she sees to the development of various kinds of programs that assist people in dealing with bereavement and loss and grief. And in particular, she works with children and families where children have felt loss of someone important in their lives. And so we're really honored to have you with us and be able to speak to us and hear to the few of us who are in the church, but also to those who are watching at home as we live stream. I presume tonight we figured out the glitches in the live stream so that there will actually be audio for those of you who are tuning in to watch this. So without further ado, Laura, would you please tell us more about yourself and the program and help us, please? Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Father John. I really appreciate it. Any chance I get to speak about what we do at Local Hearts and at BNA, I take the chance. So I really appreciate it. So I am program coordinator for Hopeful Hearts, which is a grief support program for children and their families. In addition to that, I am the volunteer coordinator for BNA Family Hospice. So I help to coordinate volunteers who not only visit with hospice patients and give respite to their caregivers, but I also coordinate volunteers who provide bereavement support to the families of hospice patients once they have died. So at BNA we have we follow our families for a year, and we provide phone calls, bereavement support phone calls to them throughout that year. And we also provide bereavement mailings to them as well. In addition to that, we have 2 support groups that are open to the community. You don't have to be a family from hospice. They're open to anybody in the community. I left some brochures and some flyers about those programs. We have a daytime adult grief support group that's run by our chaplain, Lori Parks. And it meets monthly, the 3rd Tuesday of every month. And they meet at the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Indiana from 2 to 3:30. And then we have another adult grief support group that meets in the evenings, on Monday evenings, and that is run by Jan Starley, who's our bereavement facilitator at Hopeful Hearts. And that meets at Seventh Day Adventist Church as well, and it meets 5:30 to 7, and that's Monday evenings. So Lori's daytime group, you can just kind of show up to that. You don't have to register or anything, but Jan does ask that you register to participate in her group. So let me tell you a little bit about Hopeful Hearts. So Hopeful Hearts was founded by Diane Beaver in January of 2009, and we merged with BNA of Indiana County in January of 2012. And like I said, Hopeful Hearts is a grief support program for children and their families. We are modeled after the Highmark Caring Place in Pittsburgh. I don't know if you guys have heard of them. They have several locations now. And so we have, we follow their model, we've gone through their training and provide the same kind of training that they do for their volunteers, with our volunteers. A family may participate in Hopeful Hearts if you have a child who is 18 years of age or younger and has experienced the death of a loved one. And our program is free of charge, and families may begin anytime throughout the year. So we meet during the 4th Tuesdays of the month. We meet at Grace United Methodist Church in Indiana. They have been with us since the very beginning. Hopeful Hearts started out as a kingdom assignment that Diane Beaver and her husband were given, and they felt the need for a grief support program for children in our area because there isn't anyone close to us that could provide that support. So that's how we got started. And so a typical family session night, I want to say typical now because things are definitely not typical these days. But before the pandemic, we would have a light meal. We would start with a light meal, usually pizza and salad, and we would meet like in their fellowship hall there, a big room where we could socialize with our families. We would put games out for the kids because the kids tend to scarf down their food real quick and then they want to play those games. So we have volunteers who will be available to play the games with the kids. We would have an opening circle where we say our pledge. Our pledge is, I will care for you, you will care for me, together we will care for each other. And we go over our rules at Hopeful Hearts. So we have 3 main rules at Hopeful Hearts. One is confidentiality. Anything that's said at Hopeful Hearts stays at Hopeful Hearts. And that includes our kids groups. So if there's an activity or discussion going on in group, we don't tell the adults that have brought the children anything that has been said in group, unless it is something that would be harmful to them or to others. But otherwise, we stay confidential to the kids as well. We give the adults some tools to work with to help engage their kids in conversation. So we'll let them know what kind of activities they're doing in their groups, and maybe give them a hint of what kind of things to ask them about, so that they can ask them those questions and converse with them on the way home. If you have a kid come home from school and you say, "What did you learn at school today?" Nothing. So if you have the right tools and the right information to ask them some open-ended questions, and you'll get a little bit more from them than just the yes or no answers. Our second rule is the I pass rule. So if there's a discussion going on or an activity that someone is not necessarily comfortable in participating in, they just have to say I pass, and no questions asked, we just move on. We feel that the child or the adult who's passing is still getting some kind of benefit from group sitting and listening to other people's stories, and they don't necessarily have to participate that way. They're still getting something out of it. We find that new members who might tend to pass at the beginning, eventually they will start to share with us as well. We had a grandmother who was raising her grandkids just in our program, and they came to us for 3 years, and the grandmother never shared until that third year. Like something just made her feel comfortable enough to start sharing. So that was a really great day for us. And our third rule is no hurting with our words or our actions. After opening circle, we break into groups according to age. So we'll have a preschool group, we have a young elementary group, a middle-aged group, which is around 10 to 13, and a teen group, and then we have an adult group. This year we have 2 adult groups because we have so many, and we're trying to stay socially distanced. So we have 2 groups. One group is a specific spousal loss, and the other group is a variety of different losses, whether it be their adult child's loss, their brother, their uncle, grandparent, those types of things. Once in group, they will be in group for about an hour, and they'll do activities, games, discussions that all revolve around feelings, sharing their memories, helping them along their grief journey. Hope Hearts is a safe place to share your thoughts, feelings, and memories. We're not a counseling service. We are a peer support program where you can share with others. And one plus is we have a therapy dog that joins us every session, and so gets sense. And so they tend to, come close to the people who need them most that night. So it's really interesting to see. So to date, we have served 123 children and adolescents, 98 adults, and 71 families. Our average is about 10 families a year. Currently, we're at 13. Twice a year, we have 2 big group projects that we work on. We tend to have some kind of a theme. We'll read a book to all the kids and the adults together, and we'll have a discussion about it, as well as do some kind of craft project to go along with it. Some of the things that we've done are like worry dolls. So we've read a book called Wimberly Worry, and discussed all the things that make us worry, and what we can do to help ease our anxiety and worry. And then we made some worry dolls and talked about the legend of the worry dolls. So that was a really fun one for them. We've done memory shadow boxes and memory lantern projects. So just this past December, we did a memory lantern project. And you can see some pictures of our finished projects and our families with them on our Facebook page if you're interested. At the end of the year, we do a quilt project. Each family works together to design a quilt square to memorialize their loved one who has died. Cindy Griffith with Creative Fabrics, a quilt shop in Evansburg, she quilts each quilt square for the family. It's a little rod pocket on the back of it so that they are able to take it home and display it. So we'll have a quilt dedication ceremony. She does that over the summer. And so we'll have the quilt dedication ceremony in the fall. So this is where our families can come together and share their stories of their loved one and kind of tell us about the specific things in their quilt and why they chose them. We light a candle in memory of their loved one, and then they're able to take their keepsake home. We also have a lending library at Hopeful Hearts, which is available to the whole community. You can see what kind of books that we have available to you on our website, hopefulheartspa.org. and you go under resources and you'll see different sections of our grief library for young kids, for adults, teens. You can see a list of the books and a description about the book. So if there's something that you find, ooh, that sounds like it might be helpful to me, you can just call us or email us and ask about that, and I'll be happy to pull that for you and make sure that you get that book. So I write a grant every year for replenishment of our grief library, because at the end of our year, we let each participant of Hopeful Hearts take a book home with them. So the last couple of years, Quota Club has funded our grief library replenishment, and they've also funded our Quilt Square project. So we're very thankful to them. We also do memory bears, where our families can bring in clothing from their loved one who has died, and we will have a lady make them into these memory bears. So I've written a grant for that as well, so the Community Foundation for the Alleghenies is supporting and funding that project this year. So we do have some volunteer opportunities with Hopeful Hearts. Every fall we hold volunteer training for family greeters, food servers, and our greeters and our food servers may attend fewer trainings just because they do not work in group with the kids. So we're running totally on volunteers. We have 3 staff, myself, my assistant, and then our bereavement facilitator, Jan Starry. Other than the 3 of us, we run totally on volunteers, so we're very appreciative of our volunteers.
Do the participants pay anything?
No, it's free of charge, so we're nonprofit and we don't charge our participants. We are funded by a lot of community donations and organizations in our community, so we're very thankful to a lot of our supporters. We have a lot of fraternal organizations. Delaney Subaru funds us through their Share the Love event. The Indiana Area School District Key Club funds us through an event that they have called Battle of Faculties. So, and other donations from individuals. So we're very, and any grants that I write. But yeah, so we provide that service free of charge. Anything else? So this one gives you a little bit of statistics. So 1 in 20 children will experience the death of a parent before they graduate high school. And 1 in 14 children, or 5.2 million, will experience the death of a parent or sibling before they reach the age of 18. And by 25, this number more than doubles. 1 child in 7 will experience the death of an immediate family member by age 10. So this is why we do what we do. So I wanted to, there's kind of a difference between grief and mourning. So I kind of wanted to let you guys know about that. So grief is a combination of internal thoughts and feelings that we have when someone we love dies. Mourning is the outward expression of that grief. So it's like kind of the physical. Grief is the internal and mourning is the outward expression of that. So things like crying, talking, music or artwork that you might do, visiting the gravesite, those types of things are mourning activities. And when we talk about grief, we talk about grief being on a spiral. So kind of the stages of grief overlap each other and mix together. And instead of a straight line, it's more circular. So I brought these, a slinky, and it's our demonstration of the grief spiral. So say on the front of the spiral, are grieving intensely, intense feelings, and then they may subside a little bit, come around towards the back, not as intense, and then something triggers it, and you come back around. So it's a constant circular motion being expressed by the spiral. Some of those triggers could be special events that occur, anniversaries of death or other events, birthdays, those types of things could be triggers. Hearing somebody's voice who sounds like your mother's. We talk at Hope Forest, we talk about, 5 senses, and how you can grieve with those 5 senses. So seeing something that reminds you of your loved one, hearing something, tasting, etc. And as you grieve, and you know that you are, I don't want to say getting better, because we say we never stop grieving. We always continue to grieve, it just might not be as intense. And so you're able to, remember things and share those memories without it being as hurtful as it once was towards the early stages. Now, Dr. Alan Wolf, he is a thanatologist. I think I'm saying that correctly. So he studies the of death and dying. He is somebody who studies death and dying. So he has come up with the 6 reconciliation needs of mourning. So our goal in our work through the grief process is to come to the point of reconciliation. So reconciliation is what occurs when the mourner works to integrate the new reality of moving forward in life without the physical presence of the person who died. So number 1 is acknowledging the reality of death. So children and adults grieve differently. Children tend to grieve in bursts. They might be playing, having a good time, and all of a sudden they'll be like, I miss my mom. And then they're right back to playing. So they kind of grieve in those little bursts. But that's them acknowledging death. So after acknowledging the reality of death, then there's moving toward the pain of loss while being nurtured, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So this is, embracing your wide range of emotions and feelings, and we're letting our kids know that it's okay if they feel differently than we do, and that they have their own feelings. And children tend to mourn intimately, so they may be okay for a while, and then something triggers them, and they're back at feeling that loss again. Number 3 is convert the relationship with the person who has died from one of presence to one of memory. So we do a lot of memory work at Hopeful Hearts. And I know Jan does some memory activities through her adult support group too. Like I said, we did the memory lantern, memory shadow box, different things like that. We've done collages. Our adults really like those. Where you do a collage using like magazine pictures, just sift through a magazine and pull out things that might remind you of your loved one. Make a collage of them, and then sharing that with the rest of the group is really, really beneficial, and tends to make them feel a little bit better, remembering their loved one. yeah, we always encourage to keep the memories alive and not to block them out. Next is develop a new self-identity based on a life without the person who died. So when someone dies, it kind of changes the dynamics of a family. So if the father dies, if there's an eldest son, he might feel the need to take on the role as the father figure of the family. If there was somebody in your family who was the driver, someone who took you to run your errands, do those different things, and that person has died, then that changes the whole dynamic. So there's all kinds of different ways of developing a new self-identity once a person has died. And then number 5 is relate the experience of the death to a context of meaning. So we allow the child to search for and restore a sense of meaning in life after the death. We allow them to ask the questions how and why, and different things like how could a drunk driver crash and kill my mommy? Or why didn't my daddy's body work right? How can my sister die when she is younger than me? All those different kinds of questions. And adults don't always have the answers. One of our biggest, we use listening statements whenever we are training our volunteers and working in our groups. And one of our listening statements is, I just don't know. Like sometimes that's the right answer, you don't know. So it's okay to tell the kids that as well. We're always honest with the kids. We always use the correct terminology. We don't say we lost someone. We don't say they went to sleep. We always say died, death, those types of words, because we don't want to confuse them. Wondering, Grandpa, we lost Grandpa. Well, let's go find him. So we want to make sure that we use real terminology with them. Number 6 is experience a continued supportive adult presence in future years. So grief children need adult stabilizers in their lives, even long after the event of the death, because society tends to push to get over it. And many times people feel abandoned right after the death, like even adults, shortly after the death, people are coming and bringing you casseroles and sending you cards and calling you on the phone and visits. And then after a couple weeks, it all ends. And they don't realize that you're still grieving. You still need their support. Things like support groups and programs like Local Hearts are beneficial to those who are still grieving. I really didn't realize that myself until I went through training of this program. Like, that's right, I do. Like I check on my friends, the first couple weeks, and then I don't. So now I know I'll send them a text. I'll give them a phone call. Say, hey, you want to go for coffee? Just to check on them and see how they're doing. Well, throughout their grief journey. And so as kids grow, they grieve in different ways as they go throughout their life. So, if they had a father who died when they were young, they grieve in their childlike way, grief bursts, and then as they get older, like they might, come to their high school graduation, and their dad isn't there yet, so they kind of have a grief all over again. That spiral again comes back around. things like that, or walking them down the aisle when they get married. Those types of things can be triggers, so kids will grieve differently throughout their life. So some of the benefits for peer support, whether it be through Hopeful Hearts or a peer support group for anything really, they experience commonality. So they feel like they're not alone. They are in this with others who have gone through similar situations. And there's a variety of resources and viewpoints. So we at Hope Hearts, we don't give advice, but the group can give each other advice. If somebody, is going through the same thing, they can kind of help each other out that way. Our kids tend to feel, when they're in a group with friends who have gone through that, they really feel comfortable sharing. It's something about not worrying about what they're going to think of them. They feel more relaxed when sharing in a group of, people who have gone through the same things. So a lot of times there's a lot of things that happen during school that trigger things like a mother-daughter banquet or mother-daughter dance. The Mother's Day crafts that they do in school. Those types of things, can trigger them, and then they don't have that friend at school who they feel comfortable sharing with. So having our group is pretty beneficial to them. So another thing that's beneficial about peer support is skills practice. So when children come to groups, there are things that they want to do or say, that they're uncertain how to do it. Peer support can help them more in ways to do that, how to express their feelings, how to practice new skills before trying them out in the real world. It enables them to get the help with knowing what their needs are, so they can be met properly. And vicarious learning. So kids are learning when they're hearing different stories from their friends in group. They're given the opportunity to learn through the experience of others as well. So while they have a commonality, there are still some slight differences in their group, so they are learning from each other's different situations. Another thing that peer support, and especially Hopeful Hearts, is that we are that constant for them. We are structured organization, and they need that more than anything in their life. Their life has been upheaved so much that kids really need that structure, and that's what we can give them. We do the same routine, we do different activities, but they get used to that, which is pretty beneficial to them. And we try to keep everything consistent. So the volunteers who are working in their group, we try to keep the same volunteers in that group the whole year. That way they're not, having another loss of somebody who has left them. So that's another positive thing about peer support. And we are very fun. Like we don't sit around and cry all the time. We're very fun. We do laugh a lot. There are times where we're sad and cry, but we tend to have a lot of fun with our activities. So I think people worry that it's going to be a sad time. So, we want to make them aware that that's really not the case. Because our adult groups might tend to be a little bit more emotional, but they can be a bunch of goofballs too. So they have a lot of fun to do too. I wanted to let you know that I also have a booklet that I brought for you guys to take home with you too. The VNA has put this booklet together. It's Grieving Your Way, Hope and Healing. It's articles to help in bereavement. So there's a lot of good things in here, especially from Dr. Alan Wolfeld. We really like him. So he's the one who gave us the reconciliation needs. So he also has a mourner's bill of rights, and it's in this booklet too. So you can take a look at that. He says you have the right to experience your own unique grief. No one grieves in the exact same way. So when you turn to others for help, don't allow them to tell you what you should or should not be doing or feeling. You have the right to talk about your grief. Talking about your grief will help you to heal. So seek out others who will allow you to talk as much as you want, and as often as you want. And if at times you don't feel like talking, you also have the right to be silent. That's another one of our listening skills, which is silence, which can be really hard for people sometimes. If you want to help someone, you feel like you need to be doing something, saying something, so it's really hard, but it's okay to have a little moment of silence as well. You have the right to feel a multitude of emotions. So, there can be confusion, disorientation, fear, guilt, relief. All are just a few of the emotions you might feel as part of your grief. I know that sounds weird to say relief, but if you've had somebody who's been suffering, sometimes you do feel that relief, and that's okay. Guilt, if you felt like you didn't do enough, or wish you would have done more. So there's all kinds of different feelings, and all of those feelings are justified and normal, as we say. And others may try to tell you that feeling angry, for example, is wrong. Don't take these judgmental responses to heart. Instead, find listeners who will accept your feelings without condition. So try to surround yourself with good listeners. You have the right to be tolerant of your physical and emotional limits. So your feelings of loss and sadness will probably leave you feeling fatigued. Respect what your body and mind are telling you. Get daily rest, eat balanced meals, and don't allow others to push you to do things you don't feel ready to do. So those are some of the things that we check on when we do our bereavement support through hospice. We have a checklist for our volunteers to check on them, make sure that they are eating well, make sure they're sleeping well, that they're taking care of themselves physically as well. And you have the right to experience grief first. We talk about kids grieving in birth, but you have the right to do that as well. Sometimes out of nowhere, a powerful surge of grief may overcome you, and this can be frightening, but it's normal and natural. And again, find someone who understands and will let you talk it out. You have the right to make use of ritual. The funeral ritual does more than acknowledge the death of someone loved. It helps provide you with the support of caring people. More importantly, the funeral is a way for you to mourn. If others tell you the funeral or other healing rituals such as these are silly or unnecessary, don't listen. So whatever works for you, that's the most important. And then you have the right to embrace your spirituality. If faith is a part of your life, express it in ways that seem appropriate to you. Allow yourself to be around people who understand and support your religious beliefs. If you feel angry at God, find someone to talk with who won't be critical of your feelings of hurt and abandonment. a lot of times we have all kinds of different feelings when it comes to our spirituality. We might become stronger in our faith and rely on God a lot more than we used to. We might be mad at God for what has happened to your loved one. All of that is normal. And you have the right to search for meaning. You may find yourself asking, why did he or she die? Why this way? Why now? Some of your questions may have answers, but some may not. And watch out for the cliched responses some people may give you. So comments like it was God's will, or think of what you have to be thankful for, are not helpful, and you do not have to accept them. And you have the right to treasure your memories. So again, we talked about that. Memories are one of the best legacies that exist after the death of someone you loved. You will always remember. Instead of ignoring your memories, find others with whom you can share them. Something that we were doing recently in our adult group at Hopeful Hearts was a memory capsule. So we were having the adults write memories on little pieces of paper that were going into this decorated time capsule for the kids to look at later, whenever you guys decide to do so. Because some of our kids, especially if they're young, they feel afraid that they're gonna forget what their mom looked like, what they sounded like, some of those memories. So we're having the adults write down these memories for them so they can open that up and look at it whenever they like. You have the right to move towards your grief and heal. Reconciling your grief will not happen quickly. Remember, grief is a process, not an event. Be patient and tolerant with yourself and avoid people who are impatient and intolerant with you. Neither you nor those around you must forget that the death of someone loved changes your life forever. So there's just some other really good articles in here about bereavement, how long does grief last? Grief can last months, years. We say that you never really get over it. You continue to grieve, you just might do it differently. Lots of different things. One more thing that I'm going to share from this booklet. This one says, you know you are getting better when. So this is by Helen Fitzgerald. So the process through grief is so slow and so often of a one step forward and two step backwards motion that it's difficult to see signs of improvement. The following are clues that will help you to see that you are beginning to work through your grief. You are in touch with the finality of the death. You now know in your heart that your loved one is truly gone and will never return to this earth. You can review both pleasant and unpleasant memories. In early grief, memories are painful because they remind you of how much you have lost. Now it feels good to remember, and you look for people to share memories with. You can enjoy time alone and feel comfortable. So you no longer need to have someone with you all the time or look for activities to keep you distracted. You can drive somewhere by yourself without crying all the time. Driving seems to be a place where many people cry, which can be dangerous for you and other drivers. You are less sensitive to some of the comments people make. You realize that painful comments made by family or friends are made in ignorance. So I think at first, they're really hurtful when they say that wrong thing, but eventually we're like, they mean well. And you look forward to holidays. So once dreaded occasions can now be anticipated with excitement, perhaps through returning to old traditions or creating new ones. We always tell people when holidays are coming up that you don't have to do the same traditions that you have done. You can change it up a little bit if you'd like and make new traditions. But it's okay to do the old traditions as well, or a variety of the two. And we also talk about the anticipation of the holiday. Sometimes it's worse than the holiday itself. So if you have a game plan, if we have a plan for the holidays. If you're like, okay, we're gonna go to, Aunt Susie's house like we normally do. But if I feel overwhelmed being there, this is my plan for leaving. Or this is my plan B. That way you don't feel as nervous and much anxiety once you get there. You can reach out to help someone else in a similar situation. It is healing to be able to use your experience to help others. So that's, what peer support is about too, is helping others. And we've found at Hope Hearts we have some families who return to us for a year or two after, and then we have new families. It's really nice to have that mixture. The new families can see the hope, that there is hope with the veteran families. That see that they've made it through, so it's possible. The music you shared with the one you lost is no longer painful to hear. Now you may even find it comforting. You can sit through a church service without crying. Some time passes in which you have not thought of your loved one. When this first happens, you may panic thinking I am forgetting. This is not true. You will never forget. You are giving yourself permission to go on with your life, and your loved one would want you to do this. So there's several more things that are helpful in letting you know that you are that you're getting better with your grief.
I think Laura has given us many thoughts that are maybe sparking ideas for some of us. So one of the things she's telling us, as we hear here clearly, is that there is great benefit to be had from finding confidential people with whom you can share your grief. She has made that abundantly clear. There's another side of that, though, that she's also touched on, that there's a kind of sanctity to the relationship that two people would have had, whether as spouses or as parents and children or as real friends. And so that sanctity is often described, how could anyone else understand or grasp what I'm feeling about all of this? So I hear that in your work with adults, it appears it manifests itself in certain ways, and in children in other ways. So, I also hear her saying that the spiral of grief means that when we have experienced the death of someone, we will, whether you want to use the imagery of children, burst out. And I think it's not a bad imagery for adults, because when you experience the death of a loved one, you may find yourself suddenly crying unexplainably. You would say unexplainably, but it makes perfect sense, because something has triggered strongly that relationship again, that the grief that's so powerful. Another thing I hear you talking about in all of this is how much mourning plays into the process. You all probably remember times when people actually wore mourning bands, remember, black ribbon or something. And there was a period of time when I think people thought that was a little too morbid. But I wonder if there wasn't something honest about it that said, I'm wearing that because it's true for me. So I hear lots of stuff here that is based on the research people have done, and also based upon the experience that you have found yourself in working with both children and adults in this sort of service to others. I think, I found myself thinking, I don't know, somebody asks me this question almost every year, so, well, what's normal? when it comes to grieving. And I find myself thinking, I honestly don't know if there's a norm that you can point to. And I've spoken with people deeply into grief who speak to us about how it goes on. And just when you thought you were improving, suddenly you're back to another point with it. I think I've heard you say that is, in one odd way, normative. It's a difficult. So I don't know if anyone wants to approach any certain questions based upon some of these things that we've heard, while she still has a little time to be able to speak out of her experience.
And sometimes you have a question and, you don't necessarily feel comfortable asking it in front of others. Like, please feel free to give us a call anytime at the office. Like, myself and Jan, our bereavement facilitator, we're happy to help you anytime.
I would think even that takes a bit of self-movement to work, right? I mean,
Yeah.
one has to feel confident enough that I'm okay in asking, and also I can feel that I'm still honoring that person who loved me so much or was a part of my life. And interestingly, you haven't said anything about experiences where people had negative experiences with others while they were alive. And yet we know that that's a big issue also.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we currently have, a few in our adult group who didn't necessarily get along with the loved one who has died. So that is a big struggle that they have within themselves, to be there in group as well. So they might think that they're not grieving the loss of their mother because they didn't have a relationship with them, but they might be grieving other things. They might be grieving that relationship that they didn't have, or grieving that they weren't able to mend things. Those types of things, for sure.
So let me just return to one of the theological kind of components of this. Namely, you talked about the value of faith in our lives and saying that it's certainly something of a support for us as we live. And yet so many of our prayers will talk about, even during Lent, they'll say, Lord, help us not to lose sight of eternity, not to forget all of the things we have to do, that we're moving toward eternity. And that's both strangely consoling and upsetting at the same time for many people, I think. And so that's something that's very real. And yet, part of what I heard you saying about this question of where does God fit into this program is you believe, again, and by good reason, that people should be free to say whatever they're sensing or feeling about their relationship to God, right? And that makes a lot of sense, right? Because it allows you the freedom to speak up without feeling that somehow you're doing something wrong, right? And yet, at the same time, a person wants to know, well, what should my relationship with God be from this point on? So those are the kinds of levels of things that people are trying to make their way through.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and so I would think it's not unusual for people to experience this sense of anger at God, be upset with God, that you didn't intervene in God, you didn't act on my behalf, Now, do you find that people work through that kind of experience? How do you find it work through it?
Right. So at Hopeful Hearts, we are we don't give advice. And we don't, personally from a volunteer and staff point of view, we don't talk about spirituality. They definitely talk about it amongst themselves. We have seen them in different situations where, there's one who, used to have a really strong faith in God, and then that was, not the case once their loved one has died. Especially for, a dad, we have a dad who has 5 kids, left to raise by himself. So his faith was wavering there. And he eventually has, come back around to God. But we have seen a variety of that. And so that's what's also great about the peer support is that most likely there's somebody else in that group who's felt something similar and can, help give their advice.
So the peer support creates a safe place in which a person can express these sentiments and this new experience of their life.
Yeah.
So that person doesn't feel alone or doesn't feel strange that I would be feeling this way, or doesn't feel like I'm suddenly alienated from God.
And it's nice, again, like I said, about having some new families, some new people, and some better people, so they can see that, these people who have been grieving longer, they have come back around and have gotten through their issues with God.
Sure.
Yeah, so this is my cohort. This is Jan Story I was talking about all night about. She's our adult support person.
You were saying about God.
Would you like to come to the mic?
Yeah, because we're being live streamed as well, so they need to be able to hear that. We're being live streamed as well, so they need to be able to hear you.
Come around this side.
Yeah, make sure it's like.
That mic.
Okay, my name's Jan Story. I'm the facilitator, the bereavement facilitator for Hopeful Hearts, and I also do a nighttime support group for people who have grieved, or grieving, I'm sorry. You're saying about God, I always tell our groups, if you are very angry at God, that's okay, because God can handle it. He knows where we're coming from. So if you want to be angry at someone, don't take it out on your family. They're not going to get it. But God will. God will always understand. If you have questions as to why you've lost someone, if you've lost your 12-year-old daughter, it's really hard to get an understanding of why it happens. So if you need that answer, please ask God. In your time, in your quiet place, ask God, talk to Him. And eventually you probably will get an answer. Now, we are a secular group. We do not bring religion into our groups. For the mere fact that some people don't believe. We have so many different types of religions, denominations. So we try to keep the religious aspect out, which is, we have to. We just don't have a choice to do that. I don't know where I was going with this now. What else was I going to say?
If you are saying that you deal with this question, where does God fit into this?
People who deal with this question about their
About that?
Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, we have a family right now. The children are asking the grandma why their mother died, and she's at a loss. She has no idea what to say to this grandma. She's at a loss. So we have a lending library that we make use of for the families. And there are different books on asking God again, why? As adults, we wonder why. You can imagine how an 8-year-old child would feel to explain that to someone. And that's a pretty daunting task, having to explain death to a child. That's not easy, not that. So yeah, our lending library helps. They can always call either Laura or myself. We're always available. I tell everybody she has children I don't, so if you need to talk at 2 in the morning, call me instead of her, give her a break. but we're always available for our families. I'm always available for my participants in the nighttime group as well. Because we are pretty good when we're in a group surrounding, and when we go home and we might be by ourselves, we ain't doing so good. So we always want to be available for people. Sometimes all you need to do is just give them a virtual pat on the back and say, you know what, you're exactly where you need to be. I'm giving you permission to feel the way you feel. And that's really all we were looking for. We can't fix anything. We can't bring a person back. Only one person can do that, and we're certainly not an ally. But we can be there to listen, and quite frankly, when people are grieving, they just want to tell the story over and over and over and over. People don't like to talk about death. People start to stay away from you because of that. They don't want to look at their own mortality. And quite frankly, people don't know what to say when you're talking about losing a loved one. What can you say that's going to make sense? You don't have to say anything. All you have to say is, I'm here to listen. And that's all we want. So that's why we make ourselves available at odd times. All kinds of stuff. I'm so sorry I was late. I was at my friend is becoming a Catholic. He's converting. So that's where I was at the RCIA for that class in climate.
In climate, okay. Well, thank you for coming down and joining us even at the end of this presentation. I don't know if there are any other particulars that anybody wants to raise without revealing anything personal.
Well, I'll share something.
Please.
I had a very strained relationship with my father. And when he died, I hadn't even spoken to him for years and years. But when he died, I was very upset. But it wasn't because he died, it was because it was the hope. The hope died, that he would never wake up and say, oh, I love you. You know, you're my daughter. You know, when he died, it was the hope that he would be a father.
Yeah.
That's what died. He was already gone out of my life. So that's really what hurt, and it hurt Dad just as anything, you know, so that's all I can
You
say.
still have the hope that there could possibly be a relationship.
Right, even though I wasn't speaking to him, I didn't talk to him, you know, just the fact that he was still alive, there wasn't anything that said that he couldn't have picked up the phone one day and said, hey, you know, let's talk. But once he's gone, then that was the end of that hope. So that's really what died. So that was the end. So
What you did was started grieving when you lost the connection. It wasn't a death grief. You lost the connection with your dad. So you were grieving that, wanting to be a dad and a daughter again. You wanted to be there and say, honey, you're okay, everything's cool with us. So
there was
that's
no again. It's a long story. There was no again. It's a long story. There was no again. You didn't call that up in the beginning.
keeping the dad and although
But you know,
getting together was gone. So now you're grieving another situation. Grief is not just death. Grief can be loss of a job. Kids that go away to college who have never been away from home. That's grief. It's not just death. When people have Alzheimer's, they start to grieve that person way, way back when it all begins. They know that person has changed. They don't have their mom, they don't have their dad anymore. So we don't give enough thought about different types of grief. If that's what happened to you, you just lost all hope then. You lost your last chance, right?
yeah.
That hurt your heart.
And it's a loss of hope for truth. That's really what it was.
Yeah.
Because he had the answers to lots of questions, you know. And once he's gone, then there's no way for me to know that, from him. So,
My dad and I were very close, and I lost him 4 years ago. But I really miss that he was like an encyclopedia for our family. He knew everybody who was related, and why they were related, this and that. And so many times I'll be thinking, oh, I'll go ask Dad who this person was. They're not there. So yeah, I can't say I know how you feel, I don't. But I can certainly appreciate how you feel. But that loss is there with you all the time.
Anyone else with any other, maybe you'd like to share? Well, I want to thank you all for participating, both those who came into the sanctuary of the church here tonight, and those who were watching from home on this live stream. And we want to thank the two of you for making time to be with us so that we could begin to put our toe into this water, of the stream that's very real, and we would now have some idea that there are some resources that could help any individual who's feeling this loss, this grief through death, whether they're youngsters or teenagers or adults. And here, I suppose most of us, we're all adults here in this, who have gathered or watched this now. So we're looking to process those things in our lives in a way that helps us to move forward. If you're talking about some hope, the hope is that your life could somehow move to another level. And so we're thankful to you both for being here, and we're thankful for the community services you provide to all of us here in Indiana County. Thanks for coming to be with us. Okay? And good night to all of you who have been watching this live stream.